Brother Jamal, mastersofthecosmos.com, and we're back for a special edition of Etymology Vitamins. This edition is viewer's choice, and I'm going to go over some words that were requested some time ago. Sorry that I'm just now able to post this, but whenever we're able to do it is the right time to do it. So, first word, accountability. Now, one source traces the word accountability back to the Indo-European root P-E-U-E, poo, cut, strike, dig into. Okay. Another source traces it back through the Latin putere, to prune, to purify, to correct. Now, when we look at this word accountability, we have to keep in mind the suffix ability, which really points to being able, obviously. So accountability is really saying able to account. So when we look at this word, we're really digging into account, and to be more specific, we're really looking at the word count. That's what we're really at the essence looking into when we probe this word. So count itself is what means to cut, strike, dig into. And the other source tracing it back through the Latin putere, to prune, to purify, to correct. Now, if we think about that old Cometian story that many of us are familiar with of Osiris and Set, the brother of Osiris, who tricks him and gets him to get into the coffin, and we know the story progresses to where Set chops his body up into 14 pieces. Chop also meaning cut. What Set does is he counts Osiris. Part of what that story is pointing to is the necessity of both characters. There has to be an Osiris and there has to be a Set. Okay? Osiris, as the mythology says, was 28. Numerologically, 2 plus 8 equals 10. 10 is 1 plus 0. 1 plus 0 equals 1. So Osiris is whole. Okay? For something to be counted, it already has to be whole. You can't split something in its essence that is not already inherently whole. And the splitting or cutting or striking or dividing process is necessary to purify that which already appeared to be perfect. It's a marvelous story. This story of Osiris is also the story of numerology, and vice versa. This is how the number 1 is divided up for the sake of purification. So accountability is the ability to be counted, which means that something already had to be whole. Most people in our world who struggle with accountability, and this is just from the mundane surface understanding, connotative understanding of accountability, but it still applies. People who struggle with being held accountable, or with the concept of accountability as it applies to them, it 9 times out of 10 is stemming from a lack of feeling inherently whole. There's an emptiness. You know, people who are always trying to cut corners and run some game or some trick or some scheme, you know, you'll find that those people have a difficulty with accountability when it applies to them. It's just a sign of lack. They're not even worthy of being cut up by Set because they've never been Osiris. We could go on and on that one. Second word, blessed. Now, blessed from one source traces back through the Middle English blessing, to sanctify or consecrate with blood, rendering holy, to render happy. Okay. Now, many people have heard over the years, first person I heard say it was a lady named Yafa Bay, that we're not supposed to say blessed, and because it means to bleed, and of course this points back to that, and that the correct use or correct way of saying that word is bliss. What's interesting though is that the consonants of both words are the same, bless and bliss. The consonants of a word are like the container. The vowels are like the soul, the essence. So, bless does etymologically take on a negative perspective, or a negative mask, if we will. But the thing about it is, what I've learned through studying etymology is that one of the things it shows and reminds us of is the fact that we live in a dualistic reality. If you look at the 7 Hermetic principles, if you really look at them close, they're all speaking to some form of duality. So it's almost like it's a reminder of, maybe we could say, one of our number one tasks down here in this physical reality is to constantly strive to become the number 3. The number 3 is the affinity. The number 3 is the perfection that comes out of the 2 seemingly polarities. So bless being or bless versus bliss is not so much of a good versus evil type scenario. Bless versus bliss can be understood in the coded root of usfer. Usfer, that is SFR in English, that root, usfer. Now, usfer is the root of the word suffer, SFR, suffer, okay? But that same usfer, and I'm pronouncing it in its Arabic package. That's how it's pronounced in Arabic, usfer. Usfer is the name of, is the word for gold or yellow in Arabic, okay? So usfer is or refers to the finished work symbolically. On the surface, it's gold or yellow or saffron, usfer. Symbolically, usfer speaks to the finished work. So here we have suffer as the more negative word, but it holds within itself the same meaning as usfer, the finished work. Now take that back to what we're looking at with bless and bliss. Bless, yes, it appears to be negative, but it in essence shows itself to be a necessity for the bliss. The bless and the bliss are always connected. The polarities are always connected some kind of way. Even if it doesn't make sense to us, they're always connected. We even learned that through astrology. There are 12 signs, but they're really 6 twins. They're all connected. Something's connected to some kind of way to what appears to be its nemesis or its antithesis. They're forever joined at the hip. Third word is clergyman. I mean, these are some good words. This is one where we'll look at, break it up. Man speaks to the mind, okay? So let's just establish that. When you have man is either going to speak to the mind or the hands, okay? And those two symbolically are the same thing. So clergy, though, comes from 2 roots. Kal, K-A-L, and Kel, 8, which is a root family. All right, so first one, Kal, strike, break, things broken off. Kel, 8, cut, divide. Okay, now it's funny. This goes back to where we started. We started out with the word accountability, and count comes back to mean cut, strike. And here we're at clergy, cut, divide, strike, break, things broken off. Now, in our world, when we think of the clergy, we think of the men of the cloth, or women, or the man of the cloth or woman of the cloth, huh? You know? The preacher, the right reverend, so forth. But etymologically, clergy speaks to something striking, breaking, or something being broken off. Now, the word science comes to mind just because I already know the etymology of it. It comes from the root sek, S-E-K, Roman numeral 2. That's another family. And it too means to cut, split, divide. Now we're getting somewhere, because we have basic framework of what we think scientists do. They're solving problems, right? See, the word solve is a key clue, because solve is where we get the word solution. And when you have a solution in chemistry, it is something that has broken down a substance, okay? An original substance that was concentrated, it has broken up its elements into smaller particles, which we call a solution. So when you have a problem and you find the solution, it means you have cut that problem, or you have separated it into pieces. And when I separate it into pieces, I can see all the little components. When I can see all of the little components, I can see how everything is working. Thus, I can form a solution or develop a solution. Once again, the clergymen, though, the job of the clergyman is to help the people whom he or she serves to see the components of what looked to be one giant conglomerate, i.e. God. The clergyman is supposed to help the people see the multifaceted realities, complexities of the Godhead, and to see that those fragmentations are actually them. They are the shards. They are the broken pieces of the crystal glass. It's them. And only by them seeing themselves as that can they have any chance of putting it all back together. The point of separation, of dividing, cutting, splitting, in essence, is always to reunite what has been split, i.e., the final solution. Clergymen should be helping to the people mentally and spiritually to become whole. Justice, from the root I-E-U-O-S, sacred, binding, hence the law. It's interesting that Moses goes up on a mountain called Sinai to bring down the law. The root of Sinai is sin. Sin is the movement, the sine wave. It means involvement. Moses goes up on the mountain. The root of mountain is mun. Mun. Mun as in man. Again, like I said, with clergyman, mun goes back to the mind. He goes up to the higher mind to convene with the Godhead, to bring down the law. Now, but what's interesting is that justice could be associated with the planet Jupiter, which is a key player right now in our reality as it sits in Aquarius. Justice, also expansion, relatable to Jupiter in the sign of vastness, the sign of rebellion. Rebellion, yet humanitarianism. Here's something just to think about. What is justice for you? What is justice for your soul? Your individual law is directly related to your purpose. Your purpose in this incarnation is your internal law. Your justice that you bring down from the mount. It's interesting that right now, one of the main aspects of existence that is under attack is the function of the mind. That's the battlefield, the mind. C. Freeman L. said, either you control your mind or somebody else will. Consult with yours. Identify your purpose. Identify your law. Then bring it down into this 3D reality and create your path. All right, reconcile. Now, when we look at this word reconcile, we're really looking at the word conciliate, because the prefix re means to do again. So the root is consile, okay? But when you're looking it up, you're really going to be looking at conciliate, all right? From the family of Kel, K-E-L, Roman numeral 2, meaning to shout, resound, thence summon, instruct, make clear. This is where, from this same root family, we get the word clarity. Clarity, as in clear. It's funny that clarity, we think of clarity, we think of eyesight, we think of mental acuity. But it's interesting that the etymology says shout, resound, thence summon, instruct. Shout, resound. Look at that word resound. There's a re again. So it means to sound again. Okay? That's very interesting. To sound again. I'm thinking back on an old story out of the New Testament in the Bible. It's Mark, the book of Mark, 8th chapter. And I'm not going to read it, but basically it's a story of a guy who needs to be healed, and he's brought to the Christ figure. He's touched once and he can't really see, but he has to be smacked again. So it's as if the first touch was to make contact. We could call that knowledge. The second touch, though, was understanding. I see that as what reconciliate or reconcile means. It means the first touch of initial knowledge, and then the second touch that is represented as understanding. Two different things. It's a lot of people who got knowledge. I mean, we got phones in our pockets, you know. I got all these books sitting behind me. You know, it's a lot of knowledge you can get out of this stuff. Okay, so I want to show you something here on the Tree of Life that I think helps to explain what I'm talking about here as it pertains to the word reconcile. You'll see here on the Tree of Life, you look at, get it to where you can see it, you look at the second Sephiroth is, or Sephirah is Hokmah, and the third is Banah. Okay? Reconciliation would be the fourth, which is not considered to be the actual fourth emanation or Sephirah, but it's Doth. It's Doth. Because Doth could be considered as the Word. It's the Word. The the shout, the crying out, the clarity is the understanding. And I know that when we look at the tree of life, I know Binah has the word understanding associated with it. What I'm getting at is, when I refer to Doth, though, is that Doth is where that understanding is congealed into a substance, into an essence, and that essence is the word, and that is represented in Doth. It is a joining together, a coming together, reconciliation. Just if we just take recon by itself, recon, con going back to Spanish as con. Con means with or together. So recon, in essence, already is telling us about something coming back together again. Okay? So that's my take on the word reconcile. It's clarity through the second meeting. It's clarity through knowledge sinking in and becoming understanding, wisdom, and that wisdom then formulating something of power, a sword, something that's sharp, something that goes forth, which is the word. Quarantine, another great one. This comes from the root Kueter, kuter. Kuter means four. I find it quite interesting that this root traces back to mean four, given that the quarantine became a reality in the accepted year of 2020. 2 and 2 equals 4. So as we approach this word, I just want to look at some of the things that coincide symbolically with the number 4. In Tarot, the 13th major arcana is the card Death. And why am I pointing at 13? Because 1 plus 3 equals 4. In Hebrew, the 4th letter is Daleth. Symbolically, Daleth means the door. And what's interesting about a door is that it opens on one side, it closes on another. You know, the door sits on a hinge, right? The cardinal signs in astrology, cardinal means hinge, along with the root card referring to heart. But cardinal, it also means hinge. So the door sits on a hinge. The primary energy of 2020 was Capricorn, cardinal sign. Okay? And under the signature or energetic signature of Capricorn, the world went into lockdown, quarantine. So the door was closed. What's interesting is that at the same time that that door closed, in the 3D world, the door was open beyond this world. How do we know? We only can know through personal experiences when it all is said and done. Everything else is speculation until you experience things of your own. we hear these cliches about, oh, the veil is thin and oh, blah, 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 and you hear these things. But it becomes more than cliche when you experience things. When everything around you becomes acutely sensitive to you and vice versa. Meaning your world around you becomes a magical acupuncture site that you are tapping into meridians, good and bad, depending on your proficiency. So as that year that hinged on Capricorn swung the door closed, the door really swung open. Geometrically, the angle changes on the door as it moves. As one angle becomes more acute, the opposite angle becomes more obtuse. So in that regard too, the hinge closes one angle and opens another. This is where the idea of each person becoming his or her own magician comes into play. Because it means we have to take on the responsibility of deciding which side of the door are we on. The number 4 also means completion. It means form. So we could also say that the year 2020 was a year of foundation pouring. Even in the midst of all the things going on, this points back to being the magician. And the state of mind that we function in. Are you functioning in the state of mind where you inherently feel like you have the final say-so in the quality of your existence? Are you sovereign in your mind? If so, then you planted some seeds. You poured some concrete. And it's set. And now you're prepared to build. All right. Final word. Actor. To dig into this word, we got to reduce that down to act. That comes from the root ag, which means to lead, drive, push, do, weigh. Now we have words that coming from the Latin, agere, agendum, actum, agenda, act. From the Latin also, cogo, coactum, meaning press together. Cogitate, meaning weigh in the mind. This is also from this root family we get the word agrarian. That's key. Because the agrarian drives cattle in the open field. That is very important for understanding the essence of the word actor or act. Because we said it means from its root ag, lead, drive, push. Push or prod is another word that would be fitting here. When we put the ending of on a word, so actor, leader, then we could say it is one who leads, one who drives, one who pushes. Okay? Now, of course, when we hear that term actor, naturally we're going to think of what? Hollywood. Now, I leave that up to you, the viewer, to go back and do the research on how Hollywood began and the people who were instrumental in creating Hollywood, who use actors as mechanisms, tools to lead, drive certain thought processes amongst the sheep or sheeple. Now, let's take this in another direction. Drive, lead, prod, associated with agrarian, working the land culture. Again, going to this neat little handout here, you see the 12th, I think this is the 12th. And it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, the 12th Hebrew letter. See if you can see that. See that? Lamed. Lamed. Each Hebrew letter has a symbolic meaning. Okay? Symbolic meaning of Lamed is ox goad. Ox goad means ox go. When you hear the concept of the rod and the staff, the rod is to make the ox go. The rod is also the flail, the crook and the flail. The flail is to go. The crook is to apprehend. The rod is to prod, to go. So Lamed, as the ox goad, is about moving forward, which coincides with the planet Mars, which is very interesting because the primary animal or family of animals associated with the Hebrew letters, if we could say that there was a primary family, it would be the bovine family. Why? Because the first letter is an aleph, and the aleph means ox, ox head. Ox, cow, bull, yak are all members of the bovine family. Then we get back to the 12th letter and we have Lamed, ox goad, again referencing the bovine family. What's interesting that the ox goad, as it relates to Mars, forward energy, aggressively forward, is that Mars is stationed in Taurus, which is associated with a member of the bovine family, the bull. Very interesting. Very interesting. So now we see actors all over the place, on all levels, who are helping to lead the cattle, chattel, bovine, whatever, the herd in certain directions. Very interesting. Well, this wraps it up. This has been another episode of Etymology Vitamins with Brother Jamal. Thank you for your participation and your suggestions for words for me to dive into. And you may or may not wanted the commentary, but this is what I do. You can check out my website, mastersofthecosmos.com. You can find all types of tools to help you throughout your journey. There's the manifestation, the ultimate guide to manifestation. There's my book, The Lies Behind the Times. There's my booklet, 2020 and the World to Come. There are my handouts, my 5 handouts that I've created, which I'll talk about that at another time. But plenty of things over there to help you throughout your journey. But that's going to wrap it up. As always, stay down till you get up. And when you get up, stay down. Peace.